Hello everybody and welcome to Music Minutes with Mrs. Cash. We'll get on to today's lesson about some odds and ends about music and the time signatures in just a minute. But first, did you know music develops creative thinking? Students with a background in music and the arts learn to think creatively. This is a skill that can benefit you in all areas of life. Learning to think creatively can help you solve problems without obvious solutions and will help you see more than one answer. You can also listen to music to help release your creative process if you're stuck while working on a project. Take a break and listen to some music and get the wheels turning again. Go music! Let's start our lesson with a little bit more information about flags on notes. We've learned an eighth note, which is a filled-in head with a stem and one flag. It gets half a beat. There are notes that are smaller than half a beat, and the way we make those notes is by adding a flag. So if I add a flag to an eighth note, it becomes a 16th note. An eighth note got 1/2 of a beat. If we put the flag on, we cut that note in half again, and a 16th note would get 1/4 of a beat, which means we would need 4 16th notes to equal 1/4 note. Do you remember how eighth notes sometimes were beamed together by just making their flags hold hands? And there was one beam across the top because eighth notes have one flag. To beam 16th notes together, we would take 4 16th notes, because 4 16th notes would be like one beat. 4/4 makes one. And instead of having one beam, we have two beams, just like the 16th note has two flags. So there's 4 16ths hanging out together as friends. Those flag notes don't stop at 16th notes. If you continue to add flags to a note, you just keep cutting it in half. So instead of a 16th, you'd have a 32nd note. The next one would be a 64th note, and going on and on. They just get shorter and shorter. You are not going to see those notes until you're much farther along in your musical journey. But in the 7th and 8th grade, you'll see 16th notes for sure. You may even see some 16th notes in the 6th grade. So that's just a quick run through of flags on notes, particularly 16th notes that we hadn't seen yet. Next, we're going to move on to the most powerful symbol in music. It's a really difficult one to draw. Take a look at the whiteboard. I'm going to do my best. Are you ready? Here we go. Watch me closely. Oh, there it is. Ta-da! It's a dot. That dot is really powerful when you put it next to a note or a rest. That makes it a dotted note or a dotted rest. Let's take a look at some notes with dots and how many beats they get, and see if you can figure out what the rule is for how a dot works. If I have a dotted half note, I'm just going to tell you it's 3 beats. If I had a dotted whole note, it would be 6 beats. If I had a dotted quarter note, it would be 1.5 beats. Now, the easy way out is just to look at those notes and memorize the number of beats that they get. The problem is you don't really understand how it works. And you know, Mrs. Cash is all about understanding how it works. The rule for that powerful little dot is it takes the note. Dotted half note gets 3 beats. Normally a half note by itself gets how many beats? 2 beats. What do you have to add to 2 to get 3? You have to add 1. Okay, that's what's happening there. A dotted whole note gets 6 beats. A regular whole note gets how many beats? 4. What do you have to add to 6, or excuse me, what do you have to add to 4 to get to 6? 4 plus 2. Okay. I told you that a dotted quarter note gets a beat and a half. A regular quarter note gets 1 beat. To get to 1 1/2, I have to add half of a beat to that. Let's take a look at the mathematical relationship going on here. There's a 2 and a 1, a 4 and a 2, a 1 and 1/2. What's happening? 1 is what? 1 is half of 2. 2 is half of 4. 1/2 is half of 1. So the rule for the dot is that it adds half of the note's value to the note. A half note is 2, half of a half note is 1, so it equals 3 beats. Same thing for the rest of them. Dotted notes get half of their value longer. That also works for rests. So you've got a dotted whole note and a dotted whole rest. They both get 6 beats. You have a dotted half note and a dotted half rest. Notice how the dot goes after the symbol. Those both get 3 beats. You have a dotted quarter note and a dotted quarter rest. They both would get 1 1/2 beats. You could have, a dotted eighth note and a dotted eighth rest. Eighth note is half of a beat. What's half of a half? It's a quarter. Boy, this fraction math gets tedious. So it would get 3/4 of a beat to have a dotted eighth or a dotted eighth note or a dotted eighth rest. Remember the rule for the dot. That's the second part of today's lesson at the beginning. So dotted notes and rests. You give half of the value added to the note or rest. It's a good thing to remember. It'll save you a lot of frustration in the long run.
What makes pirates such good singers? They can hit the high seas. Polly want a cracker.
How about that parrot? Do you know any pirate parrots? Kind of gotten me in the mood for some jungle music and a little bit of moving around. Let's do some rhythm repeat to some awesome music. I'm going to use maracas today. Maracas are a percussion instrument that is made usually out of a gourd or something that's hollow, and they've got beans or seeds inside of them. So they're kind of a rattly, shaky thing. You could do rhythm repeat with just clapping or using some body percussion. Or if you have a percussion instrument around near you, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to go grab it. How about just a few seconds? Let's see. I'm going to relax. And you need to go. Got it? All right. I think maybe we need a little inspiring music. Maybe something kind of like this. Yeah. Feel the steady beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ooh, I think it's in a 4/4 time signature. We'll learn more about that in a little bit. Here we go. Repeat after me. How'd you do? Just wanted to get you up and moving around just a little bit. Now, let's go back to the classroom and work on that second part of the lesson on time signatures. See you there. Did you get up and move a little bit? It's kind of fun to pretend you're out in the jungle, as long as you're not being chased by tigers. Let's move on to the second part of today's lesson. We're going to talk about something that's really important in music. In fact, every piece of music you ever see will have this in it. It's called a time signature. Before we get to time signatures, we've got to review and understand a couple other things to help them make sense. The first thing we need to talk about, and we kind of practiced it in the last movement exercise, was the difference between beat and rhythm. That's a hard one to spell. R-H-Y-T-H-M. Look at all those consonants. Rhythm. So the beat is that underlying pulse that we feel in each piece of music, the one you tap your foot to, the steady beat. Rhythm happens within that steady beat, but it's the pattern of the notes and the way they happen. So a steady beat would feel like maybe 4 quarter notes over and over again. 2, 3, 4, or ta, 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 ta. The rhythm might have different notes in it, not just quarter notes. It might have a half note and a quarter note and 2/8 notes. So the steady beat that I'm feeling is 1, 2, 3, 4, ta, 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 ta. But my rhythm over that steady beat, ta, ta, ta. That's a cut. But my rhythm over that steady beat, 1, 2, ready, and ta, ah, ta, ti, ti, ta, ah, ta, ti, ti, ta, ah, ta, ti, ti. Do you see how it's a little different? The rhythm is the pattern of the beat. The beat is our steady underlying base for what we listen to when we're playing or singing music. That's the beat. The other thing we need to understand is what a measure is. I have a super technical definition for you. Are you ready? A measure is a chunk of music. Our brain likes to divide things up into neat little packages to try to help process a little better. In music, we've developed a system that chunks music up into things called measures so we can see that pattern of the beat in smaller pieces. If we put it all together in one big long string, our brain would have a really hard time figuring it out. So a measure is simply the beat between two goalposts called bar lines. They're lines on either side. They're on a staff. Here I'm going to draw it without a staff. So I would have in between those two bar lines my 4 beats, or here I could have 1, 2, 3, 4 beats. But what you're going to see in most music is that each measure will have the same number of beats. That's where our time signature comes in. The time signature looks like a fraction. Here we go with more music and fractions. It looks like a fraction, and you'll always see it at the very beginning of a piece of music, you'll have your clef, and then you might have some other stuff, but then you'll have this fraction that hangs out there, and that is your time signature. In this case, the time signature is 4/4 time signature. It's easy to read. It's got two numbers the same, top and bottom. So you would call this 4/4 time signature. What it tells you is the top number says how many beats are in each measure. Beats per measure. So there would be 4 beats in each of this measure. And the bottom number tells you what kind of note gets 1 beat. Now here's where you're going to say, Mrs. Cash, you told us the quarter note gets 1 beat. Sometimes I have to not tell you everything right away because it makes it more confusing. Depending on the time signature, the quarter note doesn't always get 1 beat. In this case, it does. If there is a 4 on the bottom, we know we're talking about good old quarter note gets a beat, just like you learned from day 1. Think of it as kind of a fraction. You could read this fraction as 4 quarters, and then you're saying quarter note. 4 quarters. So the top number is beats per measure. The bottom number is what note gets the beat. A measure of 4/4, I'm going to draw it without the staff. A measure of 4/4 has to have 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, bar line. 1, 2, 3, 4, bar line. Let's do some more. 1, 2, 3, 4, bar line. 1, 2, 3, 4, bar line. Makes sense? I'm taking a rhythm, writing it out, and I chunk it into 4 beat chunks if I'm in 4/4. If I were in 3/4 time signature, then my beats would have to add up to 3s. Let's see if we can make this one work. Here's 1 beat, 2 beat, 3 beats. Draw a bar line. 1 beat. I can't use that whole note, can I? 1 beat, 2 beats, 3 beats. Bar line. 1, 2, if I turn that into a quarter note, 3 beats. 1, 2, look at that, 3 beats. Quarter note getting the beat, 3 beats in each measure. All right, here's the challenging part. There are time signatures that change the note that gets the beat. Like I said earlier, the quarter note doesn't always get the beat. A couple popular ones in that situation would be a 3/8 time signature, or you could have a 6/8 time signature. So if I were to look at those time signatures and say what they were, I would simply read 3/8 time signature, 3 beats per measure. What note gets the beat here? There's an 8 on the bottom. If I'm reading that as a fraction, I read 3/8, eighth note. The 8th note gets the beat. So in this measure, the simplest form of it would have 3/8 notes. Now, in 3/8 and 6/8 time signature, often you'll see those 8th notes grouped into 3s because it's easier to read them that way. The tricky part is, how would I fill up a whole measure? This gets difficult. It's just math, though. If I want a note to fill up the whole measure and just count 1, 2, 3, it's a dotted quarter note. A dotted quarter note, if it in 4/4 time signature, would have been 1.5 beats. If the 8th note is getting the beat, everything else gets double the time it used to get. That would be 3/8. 6/8, you could see 6/8 notes just like that. And then maybe 2 dotted quarter notes. Anything that would add up to 6 beats with the 8th note getting the beat. These are tricky. Don't worry about it if you're not getting it yet. As long as you really understand the quarter note getting the beat on the 4/4 time signature and the 3/4 time signature or a 2/4 time signature, that's pretty good. I'm going to show you one more though, just to confuse you even more. You could have 3/2. What kind of note would get a beat? 3/2 time signature. If I read this as a fraction, it would be 3/2. So the half note would get the beat. Oh my gosh. 3 half notes in each measure. And you'd still count it 1, 2, 3. You don't see this very often, though the high school group that I'm working with now actually has 2 pieces of music in the choir that they're working on that are in a 3/2 time signature. So you can see it from time to time. It's all math. Don't be afraid of it. We'll work more on time signatures in class. That's just a start. It's been fun hanging out with you today. I hope you understand a little bit more about time signatures and those crazy dotted notes and extra flags. See you next time, but until then, here's another inspirational quote. Bye-bye for now.
I can't bear the thought of a day without music.